There are 5 things my family has never once bought in over 100 years, and not buying them is the entire reason we have never owed a single man a single dollar. Let me say that again, slow, because the English world finds it hard to believe. In 4 generations of my family, no man has ever carried a debt. No mortgage, no loan, no note owed to any bank. And we are not wealthy people, we never were. We did it on plain farming wages, the same wages the English earn and somehow still drown in debt upon. So how? How does a poor family stay free of debt for 100 years while rich families a few miles away cannot make it to the end of the month? It is not a secret of earning. We earn no more than anyone. It is a secret of buying, or rather, of not buying. There are 5 things the world tells you that you must buy, that you must have, that every decent person owns, and we have simply quietly for generation upon generation refused to buy a single one of them. And in the refusing we found a freedom that no amount of money can purchase, because it is not for sale. It can only be kept by never giving it away. I am going to tell you all 5 tonight. Sit with me. Some of them will surprise you, the last one most of all, because the last one is the thing nearly everyone you know is buying right now, this very month, and calling it normal. The first thing the Amish will never buy is the new version of a thing that still works. This is the simplest and the deepest. The English world is built on a single quiet command, whispered into every ear 10,000 times a day. The thing you own is no longer good enough, and there is a newer one you must have. My grandfather had one good wagon his entire life. One. He mended it, he cared for it, he passed it to my father, who mended it still further. We do not throw away the working thing to chase the new thing. And do you understand what that single habit does over a lifetime? The English buy the same kind of item 5, 10, 20 times across their years, each time newer, each time costing more, each time bought with money they did not have, on a debt that charged them again for the privilege. We buy it once, we keep it until it truly dies, and then, only then, we replace it. The difference between buying a thing once and buying it 20 times is the difference between a free man and a man in chains. And it is hidden inside that little whisper, "You deserve the new one." We have trained ourselves over 100 years to be deaf to that whisper. That deafness is worth more than gold. I had a cousin, raised plain like me, who left for a few years to see the English world. And he came back and he told me something I have never forgotten. He said that out there, a thing is not thrown away because it is broken. It is thrown away because a newer one exists. He watched neighbors put out furniture that worked, tools that worked, whole machines that worked, set them on the curb like trash, simply because the store had begun selling a shinier version. And he said the strangest part was that none of them seemed happier for it. They chased the new thing and caught it and felt nothing. And within a season the chase began again, and the debt with it. He came home, my cousin, and he never left again. He said he had seen a whole people running on a wheel that went nowhere, paying for the privilege of running, and he wanted no part of it. He took up my grandfather's old habits gladly, and he died a free man. The second thing the Amish will never buy is convenience that makes us weak. The world sells convenience the way the serpent sold the apple, as a gift when it is a trap. Every convenience you buy is a strength you give away. The man who buys every meal already made forgets how to cook, and then he must buy every meal already made forever at the seller's price, because he can no longer feed himself. The man who buys a machine to do every small labor loses the strength of his own hands, and then he must buy the machine and the fuel for it and the repair of it forever. We are suspicious of convenience, not because we love hardship. We are not fools who suffer for sport, but because we have watched convenience make the English helpless, and a helpless man is a man who must pay others for what he can no longer do himself. Self-reliance is not just a virtue to us, it is the cheapest way to live that has ever been discovered. Every skill you keep in your own 2 hands is a bill you will never have to pay. We buy almost no convenience, and so we owe almost no one. I think of a young English couple who moved near our district some years back. Good people, kind, but helpless in a way that astonished me. They could not grow a thing, could not mend a thing, could not preserve a harvest, or bake a loaf, or fix a fence. Not because they were stupid, they were clever, educated people, but because they had bought their way out of every one of those skills, paid others to do each of them, and in the buying had lost the doing. And so every single need they had to purchase at whatever price was asked, because they had no other way to meet it. They were prosperous and yet always strained, because their whole life was a series of bills for things my own children could do with their own hands by the age of 10. My wife taught the young woman to bake bread one winter, and I will never forget the look on her face when the first loaf came from the oven. She wept. She said she had spent her whole life believing she simply could not do such things, when the truth was only that she had never been made to learn, because it had always been easier to buy. Convenience had told her she was helpless, and she had believed it, and the belief had cost her a fortune. The third thing the Amish will never buy is the approval of strangers. Now hear me close, because this one wears 1,000 disguises, and most people never recognize it for what it is. When a man buys a finer buggy than he needs, he is not buying transportation. He is buying the approval of the neighbors who will see it. When a woman buys a dress grander than the occasion calls for, she is not buying clothing. She is buying the admiration of the people who will notice. Most of what the English buy, and I say this with no unkindness, for it is simply true, most of it is not bought for the thing itself. It is bought to purchase the good opinion of people whose opinion does not feed you, does not love you, and will not be at your bedside when you are old. The Amish do not buy approval because we have decided as a people that the only approval worth having is God's and our own consciences, and neither of those can be bought with a purchase. Do you know how much money this single refusal saves a family across a lifetime? More than all the others combined. Because the hunger for strangers' approval is bottomless, and a bottomless hunger will empty any pocket, no matter how deep. There was a man in a neighboring district, I will not name him, for it would shame his children, who ruined himself entirely on this one thing. He was a proud man, and he could not bear that another family's barn was finer than his, that another man's horses were better than his, that at every gathering someone might have something he did not. So he bought and bought, always reaching past his means, always for the eyes of others. And the terrible thing was that no one was even watching the way he imagined. The neighbors he was trying to impress barely thought of him at all, busy as they were trying to impress their own imagined audience. He bankrupted himself performing for a crowd that was not looking, spending real money to buy an admiration that existed only in his own anxious mind. He died with nothing but the good opinion he had purchased, and good opinion, it turns out, cannot be eaten, cannot warm a house, cannot be left to one's children. It is the single most expensive thing a person can buy, and the single most worthless thing a person can own. The fourth thing the Amish will never buy is tomorrow's money today. This is the plainest name I can give to debt, and I name it that way on purpose, so you see it clearly. When you borrow, you are buying money you have not yet earned, and you are paying a terrible price for it. You are selling your future labor at a discount to a man who did nothing but already have what you lack. Every dollar borrowed is a dollar of your future self's work, sold cheap, with the interest taken as the seller's cut. We will not do it. If we cannot pay for a thing, we do not buy the thing. We wait, we save, we do without until we can do with. It sounds simple to the point of foolishness, and yet it is the single hardest discipline in the world, because every force in the modern age is arranged to make you borrow. The whole system is built to sell you tomorrow's money today and collect the difference forever. We stepped out of that system 100 years ago and never stepped back in, and that one refusal is why no man in my family has ever lain awake owing. We are poor by their measure, but we are free and they are not, and freedom was always the only wealth that mattered. I sat once with an Englishman, a good and hard-working man, who broke down at my kitchen table over his debts. He earned, by my reckoning, a fortune, more in a year than my family saw in 5, and he could not sleep. He could not breathe. He owed on his house, on his wagons, on his furniture, on the very holidays his family had taken, on things long since used up and forgotten that he was still paying for years later. He had bought his whole life on tomorrow's money, and now tomorrow had come, and it owned him entirely. He looked at me, a poor, plain farmer with patched clothes and a mended wagon, and he said the words I will carry to my grave. He said, "You have nothing, and you are the richest man I know." Because I owed nothing, I slept, I breathed, and he, with all his earning, was a slave, and he knew it, and the knowing was breaking him. That is what tomorrow's money does. It feels like wealth on the day you spend it, and reveals itself as bondage every day after. And now the 5th thing. Lean in, because this is the one almost everyone you know is buying this very month and calling it nothing. The 5th thing the Amish will never buy is a feeling. I will explain, because this is the deepest of all 5 and the hardest to see. The modern world has learned a dark and clever trick. It has learned that it cannot sell you enough things, because a person only needs so many things. So instead it has learned to sell you feelings. It sells you the feeling of comfort when you are anxious, the feeling of importance when you feel small, the feeling of excitement when you are bored, the feeling of love when you are lonely. Look closely and you will see it everywhere. Nearly every purchase the English make that they did not truly need was made to buy a feeling. The lonely person who buys to fill the evening, the grieving person who buys to numb the ache, the bored person who buys for the small thrill of the buying itself, the anxious person who buys comfort by the armful and is anxious again by morning. And here is the cruelty of buying feelings. The feeling never lasts. It cannot. A feeling bought is a feeling rented, and the rent comes due again within the hour, and you must buy it again and again, forever, while the money drains away and the true need underneath, the loneliness, the grief, the boredom, the fear, is never once touched, because you cannot buy your way out of a thing that was never about money to begin with. We do not buy feelings, because we have other places to put them. When we are lonely, we go to our people, who are always there. When we grieve, we sit in it, and let the community carry us, and let time and faith do their slow work. When we are bored, we make something, or mend something, or visit someone. When we are afraid, we pray, and we lean on one another. None of it costs a cent. All of it actually works, where the bought feeling never did. And so we are spared the single greatest expense of the modern soul, the endless, bottomless, lifelong purchase of feelings that fade before the receipt is cold. I watched this take a woman I cared for a great deal, a kind English neighbor who had lost her husband young. She was drowning in grief, as anyone would be, and the world offered her the only medicine it knows how to sell. It told her to buy, and she did. She filled her house with things, each one bought in a moment of ache, each one promising a small relief that lasted until the box was opened, and then was gone. She was not a foolish woman. She was a wounded one, and the world had taught her that a wound is a thing you treat with a purchase. But the grief was still there under every single thing she bought, untouched, because grief has never once in the history of the world been cured by anything you can carry home from a store. She came to us finally, near the end of her rope, and we did the only thing we knew. We sat with her. We brought food. We let her weep at our table week after week, and we asked nothing and sold nothing. And slowly, slowly, the thing that no purchase had touched began to heal, because it was finally being given the only thing that ever heals it, the presence of people who care, and time, and the patient company of those who will not leave. It cost nothing, and it worked, where everything she had bought had failed. She told my wife once that she had spent thousands trying to buy her way out of her sorrow, and what finally carried her through was given to her for free by people who had almost no money at all. That is the whole lie of the bought feeling laid bare. The thing you are aching for was never for sale. Those are the 5. The new version of the working thing. The convenience that makes you weak. The approval of strangers. Tomorrow's money today. And the feeling you cannot truly buy. Refuse those 5, and I tell you plainly, you will not be able to stay in debt if you tried. There will be nothing left to go into debt for. The debt was never about your income. It was always about these 5 purchases, made over and over, each one feeling small and necessary and normal, adding up across a life to a mountain of owing that need never have existed at all. My grandfather said it best, the way the old always say things best. He said, "Son, the English are not poorer than us because they earn less. They earn far more. They are poorer than us because they buy their poverty, one reasonable purchase at a time, and call it living." And then he would go back to mending the one wagon he owned his whole life, content as any king, owing nothing to any man, free in the only way that has ever mattered. And I want you to notice something about all 5 of these things, now that you have heard them. Not one of them is about money. Not really. The new version, the convenience, the approval, the borrowing, the feeling, every one of them is about something underneath the money. A restlessness, a fear of being seen as less, a hunger for comfort, a refusal to wait. The purchase is only ever the symptom. The real spending happens in the heart, long before the hand reaches for the wallet. That is why earning more never fixes it for the English. You cannot fix a leak in the heart by pouring more water into the bucket. The Amish did not get free of debt by earning. We got free of it by healing the 5 hungers underneath, so that the purchases simply stop making sense to us. A man who is content does not buy the new thing. A man who is capable does not buy the convenience. A man at peace with himself does not buy approval. A patient man does not borrow. And a man whose heart is full does not try to buy feelings, because he already has the thing the feelings were a poor substitute for. You do not have to become Amish to live this way. You only have to learn to see those 5 purchases for what they are, the next time the whisper comes. And the whisper will come. It comes 100 times a day. But now you will hear it for what it is, and in the hearing you will have already begun to be free. That is the whole of it. 5 things we never buy, 100 years with no debt, and a freedom the richest man in the English world, drowning in everything he owns, would trade his whole fortune to feel even once. We feel it every single day, and it never cost us a thing. That was always the secret. The freedom was never something to buy. It was something to keep, by refusing, again and again, to sell it.